So anyway, welcome to the presentation. I know many of you will be watching this after today. And if you are, yes, as Michael mentioned, it's based on what currently exists today in the Fitness Industry Award, and this may change. In fact, we suspect there will be some changes in the Fitness Industry Award coming up this year. Also, I need to disclaim that this is not a presentation offering legal advice. It's for general information only. We're not able to offer legal advice. We are not a legal practice. We're a human resources consulting practice. And if you need legal advice on any specific matters relating to your business, you should seek that. Okay, so I'm going to start fairly quickly, share my screen. Some of you I know, and you'll know the relationship that we have with Gymnastics Western Australia. But for those who don't know, we've been providing HR support. We're HR Plus. We've been providing HR support for gymnastics clubs for the last almost 9 years. And pretty much the arrangement we have with Gymnastics Western Australia is if you've got anything that you're wanting to speak to somebody about on the HR front, human resources front, please contact HR Plus. It's a free service for you, for your clubs. We can talk to you about anything HR related. Give us a call, send us an email. We'll provide those addresses at the end of this presentation. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the Fitness Industry Award. So I've got some slides to share with you. Where is it? I'm just trying to find, every time I pull this screen up, it changes. I don't know why. There it is, so I can see it now. There it goes. So let's start the slide from the beginning presentation. Okay. All right. Okay, Fitness Industry Award is the award that covers most gymnastics clubs in Australia. Not all gymnastics clubs, but most, which is why we talk a lot about it in the sport of gymnastics. Okay, under the award. The award is, I don't know, 40 pages long or so. I haven't looked the most, and getting longer, I might add. It's really important for you to become familiar with this award. Anyone who's involved in rostering or payroll should be familiar with the key terms of this award, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So it gives you, under the award, some employment options, whether you engage somebody as a permanent staff member, they could be full-time, part-time, or a casual staff member. You can have permanents who are full and part-time. You can have casuals who are working full-time hours or part-time hours. But usually the word full-time, part-time typically relate to permanent employment. So what is full-time employment? 38 hours a week is typically the standard, plus reasonable additional hours. And these are terms in the award, plus also these terms are included in the Fair Work Act, which is the legislation overseeing modern awards and most employment conditions in the private sector in particular, but also in the not-for-profit sector across Australia. What is part-time under the award? Part-time is basically anything that's less than 38 hours per week. A part-time employee has reasonably predictable hours of work. And at the time of engagement, this is really important. If you have part-timers in your club, you need to agree in writing on a regular pattern of work, specifying the number of hours they might work each day, which days of the week the employee will work, and the actual starting and finishing times. I know this can be really problematic for some gym clubs in relation to complying with this, but I suppose put it in writing what your intentions are in relation to the hours. And as long as this has been discussed with the employee, they've agreed to it. It can be even an email if you don't have employment contracts. We do recommend you have employment contracts, but I know that some small business employers and new businesses may not have them, at least to start with. But we recommend you work towards developing employment contracts for your business so that the terms of engagement are clearly in writing and the employee has been given those terms. With full-time and part-time employment, well, part-time employment is under the award says there's a minimum of 3 hours daily engagement, which is really important if you've got part-timers, particularly in a gymnastics club where sometimes the shifts can be quite short. And overtime generally clocks in when those regular or agreed daily or weekly hours have been exceeded. You've also got options to employ people over a longer period, a longer roster period of 1 week, so typically 2 weeks or even a month. So hours can be averaged over those periods of time. Casuals. So under the award, there is a definition of casual in clause 12.1. A casual employee is an employee engaged and paid as a casual employee. Some of you will know that this definition of casual has been highly contentious over the last few years. There's been much case law, and now there has been, in the last month, new legislation under the Fair Work Act in relation to who's a casual and who isn't. And right now, that new legislation is being published, it hasn't been tested, and there's moves afoot to vary awards now to mirror that legislation. So we expect the definitions of casual and the terms of casuals under the fitness industry will be reviewed over the next probably 6-month period, and there could be changes under the award in this area to mirror what's been happening in the federal legislation, the Fair Work Act.
Sorry, Linda.
Yes.
Emma's just had a question regarding is it a minimum 3 hours, even if they're level 4 or above for part-time?
Yeah, okay. So we're going to get to that, Emma, the minimum engagement. Yeah. That has changed in the fitness industry. I've got a slide coming up on that one.
Right.
So I'll talk about it at that point. All right. Going back to casuals, I thought I'd include for you in this presentation, because this is brand new legislation and very relevant to gymnastics clubs. I thought I'd include this slide in this presentation, even though what you're reading here is actually what's in the Fair Work Act, not in the award. But this does override the award provisions right now. So under the Fair Work Act, and we put out a newsletter on this not so long ago, which I know that Gymnastics WA has forwarded on to states, to the clubs. So hopefully you've had a chance to read that. So the definition now is a casual employee at the time of engagement, that's when the contract's drafted, that's when they started work, is one where there's been an offer of employment made on the basis that the employer makes no firm advance commitment to continuing an indefinite work according to an agreed pattern of work for the person. This is a really important definition because it suggests the words no firm advance commitment to continuing an indefinite work could be problematic for some gym clubs if you're engaging people to fill an advanced roster that's predictable. And the person accepts the offer and is employed on that basis. So under this definition, there needs to be a history, we think, a pattern of engagement and working for a period of time to confirm that the engagement was in fact casual. At the time of the offer, employment is made and agreed by the parties, a casual relationship will have the following characteristics. So the legislation's defining this a little bit further, going to say, and they're saying the employer can elect to offer work or not. That means when you've engaged a casual, you can and maybe have demonstrated over a period of time that you haven't rostered them on shifts or you've changed those shifts, for example. The employee can also elect to accept or reject work. A casual has a right to say, no, I'm not working. This is a major change in legislation for business, especially like gymnastics clubs, where you've in many cases, hire someone as a casual, but expect them to work their shift and get cranky with them when they don't as well. You can't get cranky with them under a definition like this. If they're a true casual, then they've got the right to say, I'm not coming in today. So think about that and how that's impacting on your business and how you're classifying people. The parties adding the point of engagement describe and commit to a casual relationship. So they've agreed to that relationship when they start work, and a specific pay rate or loading is paid under the terms of the offer. That's the casual loading, which is typically paid. Now, under the legislation, there is casual conversion requirements, which differ currently to what the award states. So that's why we think this is going to be, the award conversion will be changed down the track. But at the moment, you have to sort of observe both of them because they're running in tandem. So small businesses with less than 15 headcount, you don't need to offer casual conversion unless required under the award. The employee, however, can request casual conversion. So there's a little bit of leniency here for small businesses now built into the legislation, which there wasn't before. For businesses with 15 or more headcount, after 12 months of employment, an employer must write to the employee to offer conversion. It needs to be in writing. That's if they're eligible. So there are a whole bunch of eligibility criteria that an employer may decide casual employment can't work for the business, so it's not going to be offered. On the other hand, if it will work for the business, if change from casual to permanent will work, then you can offer permanent employment. At the same time, an employee can also request casual conversion. Now, an employee doesn't have to accept casual conversion, of course, and can refuse it if they choose. And after that point, the employer doesn't have to again offer casual conversion. And if the role morphs from casual, true casual, into more of a permanent relationship, and you've gone through that conversion step, the relationship can stay as it is, which is great news for employers. That wasn't the case a year ago or so. So there's more to this. I don't want to spend too much time of this presentation talking about casuals, but please give us a call if you've got any concerns about casual employment at the moment. So typically, most people are aware casuals get a loading. Monday to Friday, it's different, 25%. The weekend loading is 30%. And there's a minimum 3-hour engagement for casuals. So this could partly answer your question, Emma. 3-hour minimum engagement for casuals from the level of levels 2 to 5. A level 1 or a level 6 or 7 casual under the Fitness Industry Award, there's a minimum of 3 hours for them. I'm sorry, 1 hour, 1 hour engagement as a casual for levels 2 to 5. Otherwise, there's a minimum of 3 hours engagement for any permanent staff and casuals at levels 1, 6 and 7. I know it's confusing. I've got another document I can send you if you want more information on minimum engagement periods. This is a new change that has been inserted into the Fitness Industry Award as well, where this minimum 1 engagement for casuals has been extended to level 5, which is a good thing. Okay, you can also engage people in different ways. As fixed term for a fixed period of time. You can engage a person as a self-employed contractor. Sometimes we see that in gymnastics, but it's not something we recommend unless the person actually has multiple businesses. So for example, you might have a choreographer that you bring in to do routines for your high-level staff. And that choreographer may work for different gymnastics clubs. Or they might be a specialist. They might have their own business, in which case engaging a contractor sounds perfectly logical. However, contractor arrangements shouldn't be used in other situations. Again, give us a call if you've got contractors working for the club on a regular basis. Please, we'd like to have a chat with you and we can go through that different legislation that applies. Some clubs have volunteers as well and work experience students who don't fit in under awards. They're outside. These fixed terms can fit under the award and usually does, but the rest, self-employed, contractor, volunteer, work experience, don't come under the fitness industry award. They're covered in other legislation. Under the fitness industry award, there are minimum pay rates which can't be altered. Basically, they are varied roughly around July every year. Has been July for a very long time, except for COVID year where there was some changes made to the starting date of wage increases. This year we expect it's going to be July, and there's usually a percentage added to the rates of pay. It's going to be, I think, under 2%, have to be under 2%. That would be our feeling this year. There are also junior rates of pay applicable under the award if they're under 20 years, and of course the casual loading. There's a document called the Fitness Industry Award Pay Guide, and that document calculates all the rates of pay under the award. It's a must-have. Make sure you've got a copy of the current Fitness Industry Award Pay Guide, and you don't have to figure out how to calculate all the rates. Just use that document. They're the junior rates percentages. Okay, classification levels. This has been another change under the Fitness Industry Award that's very important. So it's probably one of the biggest questions we get is, what classification should I be paying my coach or my administration person under the Fitness Industry Award? It is confusing. So we'll try and summarize the changes here. Level 1 isn't a coaching level. It's for unqualified people who may assist other coaches, and there is a minimum 3 hours on level 1. It's not a level that really suits a gymnastics club. And I don't think there are many clubs who would have level 1 employees. Level 2 is where qualified coaches step in. So when your coach has become qualified and you give them a job, they go straight to level 2. But that's also a level that recognises that the coach is directly supervised. They're a new coach. You're still watching them, everything they do pretty much, making sure they're doing things correctly. That's your level 2 coach. They move to level 3 when they move under general supervision. That means you're not watching them like a hawk anymore. They're not directly supervised, they're generally supervised. So that means there's someone else on the floor overseeing them. They're competent enough that you don't have to directly supervise them anymore, but you still need to generally supervise them. We think most coaches in a gymnastics club would probably fit under level 3. That would be your common, competent coach who's no longer a beginner coach, but not a senior coach either. They may hold a current gymnastics coach accreditation, and that's certainly what the industry expects, or equivalent, who have participated in 12 hours per year of recognised professional development and performed 1,500 hours of coaching. So they may not have performed 1,500 hours of coaching when they move to level 3. If they're generally supervised and they're qualified, they will move to level 3 at that point. That 15 hours of coaching is a guide that Gymnastics Australia put into the award because they felt that that's probably how long it's going to take for a beginner coach to become more competent, that they can be, supervision can be relaxed. Level 4, we think, is your senior coach. They're indirectly supervised. So that means there may not be someone on the floor when they're coaching. They're senior enough, experienced enough, there doesn't need to be someone on the floor when they're coaching. They might even be a coach who locks up the gym at the end of the day and handles most of the questions that comes through, that may come to them. they're indirectly supervised, and they may hold accreditation and may have also achieved 3,000 hours of coaching experience by the time they get to that level 4 position. Level 5 is a specialist coach who exercises high levels of initiative and judgment with broad instruction in their performance of their duties. And we'll talk more about level 5. They need mandatory qualifications. We'll talk about that in a minute. Your level 6 coach or employee is a management level coach, oversees a program, might be your head coach, could sometimes be a program manager, may directly report to a committee, something like that. But a primary part of the level 6 function is management responsibilities. They don't just get paid for coaching hours, they'll have other additional hours that they will be paid for, which relate to the administration, management, running of programs. There is also these qualification levels under the Fitness Industry Award. If you have a coach who's a level 3 coach, if they have a Certificate 3, AQF Cert 3 in sports coaching, they're paid at the level of 3A. If you have a level 4 coach already at that level and they have AQF certification level 4 in sports coaching, they go to level 4A. These are mandatory qualifications in order to make you eligible for that higher payment. It's not just your gymnastics qualification. That's assumed everybody has that. It's this additional qualification, the sports coaching qualification that is required for levels 3 and 4A. And at level 5, you need, in order to even be paid at level 5, you need a diploma level qualification in fitness or sports coaching. So if you don't have, even if you're working as a specialist coach, if you don't have diploma level qualifications, level 5 doesn't apply to that scenario. We get calls, what about administrators? Yes, they're covered under the Fitness Industry Award as well, but the award is really scant in terms of describing what levels they might come under. So these levels are how we feel you might think about engaging your admin staff. So level 1 isn't an admin level. Your level 2 might be your admin people who don't have a lot of experience and therefore they're directly supervised. Your level 3 admin person is more experienced and might be working under general supervision. We think most admin staff in a gymnastics club, given that there isn't too many, most clubs don't have a lot of admin staff, so they need to be fairly self-sufficient. The admin staff that do work for gymnastics clubs are generally experienced. So we think most of them fit at level 3. Now, those with specialist skills like payroll, bookkeeping, BAS statements, if you've got bookkeepers in your gymnastics club who handle specialised functions, then they might sit at level 4. If you've got managers coordinating the admin staff, supervising people, they're going to be sitting at level 6. And we think level 7 could be the level that applies to club managers, someone who has overall responsibility for the business. Okay, let's look at rostering practices. Okay, this is really important. Rostering controls your costs, your labour costs, which for many gymnastics clubs is their highest cost, unless you've got high rent as well, but labour costs are huge in a gymnastics club. So the hours of work under the Fitness Industry Award basically says you can work an average of up to 38 hours per week, averaged over 4 weeks. The work has to be between 5 a.m. and 11 p.m. Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Saturday and Sunday for it to fall in as ordinary hours. You can work a maximum of 10 hours per day and up to 2 broken periods per day. So that means if the shift is split into 2, there's a minimum 3 hours if you break shifts, and a maximum of 12-hour span as well. Now, we'll talk about broken shifts in a minute. I've got more information for you on that one. And you can arrange, it's very common in gymnastics to have a system of rostered days off as well. Actually, not normal RDOs, it's more time in lieu of overtime kind of system with gymnastics clubs, which we'll talk about. Under the Fitness Industry Award, you must provide breaks to your staff. This is so important. You have to roster in breaks. If you don't roster in breaks, you're into overtime, which you don't want to be into. So make sure that if you've got staff working 5 hours or more in a day, that they have a 30 to 60 minute unpaid meal break to have their lunch or dinner or whatever. If staff are working those long hours, they need a paid rest break as well, a coffee, tea break in the morning and in the afternoon. It's the smoko break that you might know in other industries. Something in the morning, something in the afternoon, 10 minutes, which is paid. And there's also a requirement for 10-hour break between shifts. So if you've got a comp running late at night and your coach has to start the next morning, then make sure they have a 10-hour break that gives them time to go back to their hotel or their home and have a sleep and get going the following morning. Note that casuals working a shift of 3 hours or less are not entitled to a paid rest break. That rest break is only for permanent staff. So there are penalty rates under the award, and penalty rates are put into awards to compensate people for unusual situations. So Saturdays have a penalty. If you've got permanent staff, they get paid an extra 25%, and casuals have a higher loading on the weekends. Sundays for permanent staff are double time. Again, casuals have that 30% loading. Public holidays are really expensive, so try and avoid them if possible under any award. It's double time and a half for a public holiday. If you have to have people work on a public holiday, switch it. See if you can switch your public holiday to another day, which means they still get paid for that day. This is permanent staff. They get paid for that day, but they get paid on a 1 hour for 1 hour basis. And you don't really want to be paying that double time and a half penalty rate if you can avoid it. Another change that's happened recently under the Fitness Industry Award, which is concerning a lot of clubs, is the 6-day penalty. So under the award, you can work somebody over 5 days of the week. The 6th day in the working cycle is paid at a penalty rate. It's overtime. So it should be avoided. If you can, don't roster your staff over 6 days. I know that's so hard to do, particularly with coaches who are coaching athletes who have to be coached over 6 days at the higher end of the spectrum. So there's probably not a lot you can do, either split the coaching responsibilities or have your coaches work that 6th day, but they will be paid. They will need to be paid more to compensate them for that. Public holidays are gazetted by the West Australian government. Overtime, so the overtime triggers, there are many overtime triggers in the Fitness Industry Award, which is why you really need to understand how to best to maximise your rostering practices. So overtime is essentially first 2 hours time and a half, and every hour thereafter is double time. That's how overtime typically works. Sunday is double time. It's a double time shift if overtime is worked on a Sunday. It's very common, however, for gymnastics clubs to engage people with a time in lieu arrangement, as I mentioned earlier. So instead of overtime in their contracts, you state that any overtime will be paid as time in lieu on a 1 hour for 1 hour basis. So that means if they work 5 hours of overtime in a week because you've got a comp on, this is for permanent staff, by the way. You can do this for casuals, but it's very tricky. We wouldn't recommend it. So use time in lieu of overtime for permanent staff as a way of avoiding overtime payments, but also providing recognition of that overtime that they can take that time that they've banked up sometime in the future. Give me a call if you're looking at time in lieu arrangements. I think they work very effectively in gymnastics clubs. They don't work if all you do is coaching classes, because it's going to be really hard to take time in lieu in that situation where your work involves coaching classes all the time. But it works well if you've got admin duties and other duties in your role where you can manage your hours, the ebbs and flows of your hours better. And accrued time in lieu needs to be taken within 4 weeks. That's also important under the Fitness Industry Award. Now, there are allowances under most awards, and the Fitness Industry Award has a few that you need to be aware of. There's a vehicle per kilometre allowance under the award. Now, this is not for going to work or home, or to a comp and home. It's when you go to the venue that you're working in and then you travel from there. So you might go to the gym, pick up some equipment, then go to the comp. So the travel payment then works while you're working at your location from that point. So if you've travelled to the gym, picked up some equipment or some gymnasts, and then you've gone to the comp, that journey between the gym and the comp then is covered by this clause. Then you come back to the gym, drop your gymnasts and your equipment off. That journey is also covered by this clause, but then you go home. That journey isn't. If you're traveling interstate to a comp and you go from your house to the airport, or you drive from Melbourne to Wodonga, Albury, then it's not going to really happen in Perth because you're not going to drive over your border, are you? You're probably going to jump on a plane. So if you jump on a plane and go to Brisbane for a comp, then from your house, that journey is not covered under the Fitness Industry Award, essentially. That's something that you then negotiate with your employees. Broken shift allowance. Okay. There is an allowance if you split that shift into 2 parts or more within a day. So your employee's working maybe in the morning, then they go off and do something else. You don't need them. They come back in the afternoon. This can happen on a regular basis in a gym club or in a comp situation, for example, as well. So there's 2 amounts of money in the Fitness Industry Award, $14.16 per day when that situation triggers, and an extra amount if that person actually incurs travel or costs during the break. So they might go home and take the bus or drive home and come back. Then that extra $1.95 is triggered per day. This has changed. So I wanted to outline the new provisions for broken shifts. So a broken shift allowance applies if the shift is broken into 2 parts and the total length of the shift is not less than 3 hours, so more than 3 hours, exclusive of meal breaks, and the span of hours from the start of the first part of the shift to the very end of the second part of the shift is less than 12 hours. So Emma, you had a question that you asked us before. Let's have a look at, so Emma's given me a scenario that a shift starts in the morning. The coach comes first thing in the morning for 2 hours, and then 6:30 to 8:30, and then goes home, comes back into the gym at 4 o'clock for another 3.5 hours and finishes at 7:30. So this coach has worked 5.5 hours in total. The shift has been split into 2, and the span from the start to the finish has been 11 hours. The break in between the 2 shifts is 7.5 hours. So if we look at A, B, and C, all those terms are met in this case. The shift was broken into 2 parts. The total shift length is more than 3 hours. In this case, it's 5.5. And the span of hours from the start of the first part of the shift to the end of the second is less than 12 hours. In this case, it is 11 hours. So yes, a broken shift allowance applies in that example. Now, this you also need to be very careful of here. The overtime provisions have changed. So there is an overtime trigger in this broken shift scenario if there's a third part of the shift is broken into 3 parts. So don't break it into 3 parts unless you have to. I know that sometimes you have to, but the third part of the shift then triggers overtime. If the break between any of the 2 shifts is less than 10 hours and the employee works for more than 3 hours in the first shift, overtime applies. So Emma, that suggests in your scenario, overtime applies to the second part of the shift.
Sorry, Linda. Emma's also asked if this is just for casuals or permanent staff.
Both.
Both.
Yeah. If the span of hours from the start, overtime also applies if the span of hours from the start of the first shift to the end of the last shift is more than 12 hours. So be really careful about broken shift rostering. The provisions have changed. We're not really happy with what has changed here. We don't think they're great. It's been a great change, but we do need clubs to be aware of this. There are also meal allowances. If your employee works an hour and a half overtime, it triggers a meal allowance. And usually the rule of thumb is, however, if you provide a meal in this situation, you don't have to provide the meal allowance. So you might be at a comp and you give them money to go to the canteen and get food, or you provide food or pizza or hamburgers or whatever it is. If you've provided the meal, you generally don't have to pay the meal allowance. There's also supervisory loading, which I know some clubs need to pay. So if you've got a level 1 to 4 employee in charge of staff, then there's a loading, a weekly loading on top of their pay to recognise those additional responsibilities. First aid allowance is a question we do get from clubs from time to time. It's paid at $2.66 per day, and we know that most coaches have first aid qualifications. You don't have to pay everybody the first aid allowance. The way to manage this is to have a roster of first aid people, put it on your notice board. Everybody knows who the person on a Monday afternoon is rostered in your club. That's the person that gets the allowance. You can often offset these allowances too, in some of these payments with higher, if you're paying above the award, so your senior person might be paid above the award, they often are, you could offset some of these allowances like the first aid allowance in their higher rate of pay, but you have to do that via their employment contract. We recommend that be done in writing. Otherwise, this particular allowance will apply to your designated first aid person. There is a uniform allowance, which is a negotiable amount, which is provided if you require your coaches or your staff to buy uniforms. If you provide them for free, you don't have to worry about this one, which I think happens in most clubs. It's more of a free allocation, uniform allocation. And the high duties is one that sometimes is forgotten. If a coach is working or a staff member is working at the next level, someone's absent, they're filling in, that attracts a high duties payment. So they need to be paid at that level, the high level, for the period that they're undertaking those high duties. Okay, other things under the Fitness Industry Award. As I mentioned before, you can be paid weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, even by agreement. There's annual leave provisions which were inserted into the award not that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. Actually, the close down provision is new. That came in November. Really welcome provision, because every gymnastics club, I think, closes down over Christmas. And that was unlawful until this provision was added into the Fitness Industry Award. So thankfully now, it is now lawful under the Fitness Industry Award, but it certainly was common, has been common practice over the history of many sporting organisations, not just gymnastics clubs. However, be aware the close down period is for one close down only. per year. So you can't close down for more than that. I know some gym clubs do. I've spoken to clubs who will take a break mid-year and if nobody works. You can't do that for permanent staff. Only one close down period is permitted. Have a look at that clause. You can also take leave in advance, and there's a cashing out option under the award, and those provisions have been in the award for a couple of years. Annual leave loading is a loading paid when somebody takes annual leave, and it's also paid if an employee terminates employment, they leave the club, and this is a permanent staff member, and they haven't used all their annual leave. You pay them out their annual leave, their unused proportion, and the leave loading gets paid on top of that. Now, this is another term that lots of clubs roll into pay if they're being paid a higher rate of pay than the award. It can be something that can be offset with wages under an employment contract, and lots of gym clubs are doing that as well. But talk to us if you want more information about offsetting some award provisions. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you can give me a call and I'll happily talk you through it to see if it's suitable and how you might go about doing that. There is a change consultation clause under the award and in the Fair Work Act. It's very important that you don't determine change that affects someone's role without talking to them first and going through a discussion process, a genuine consultation process before you make the change. What happens if your club doesn't comply? Oh, okay, all right. Yes, there's a whole bunch of legislation and penalties under legislation to fine employers who deliberately underpay staff by not paying them their correct entitlements. That is rare. Most employers try and do the right thing. Most employers try and take steps to learn and to resolve issues that arise. So it is important that you're on top of this and that you ask questions and you make inquiries if you're not sure about any award entitlements. We offer, as a consulting practice, we offer our clients wage checks, and we do quite a lot of these for gymnastics clubs. This is something we do as on a consulting basis, a private arrangement, but we do check payrolls and wages to make sure that they're above award minimums. If you're interested in doing that for your payroll or for some employees, give me a call. We can talk about how that works. So, okay, there are options under the Fitness Industry Award. If you find the award is onerous, there are options for you to vary the award terms. So through a collective agreement, we don't encourage that for gymnastics clubs. That is one vehicle. Another one is an individual flexibility agreement, which is clause 7. I'm just trying to remember what clause it's an onerous process, which can work for some employees in very limited situations. The best option is through your written employment contract by offering a loaded rate of pay to offset the awards, the annual leave loading, overtime, penalty rates, if you want to throw all that in. So you can offset this through a higher rate of pay, so long as that rate of pay would have paid your employee at least what they would have got under the award. Call me if you want to talk about that. That's fairly common within gymnastics clubs to offer higher rates of pay, loaded rates of pay. It has to be done through an employment contract where it's spelt out very carefully what's been offset. And you need to meet what we call the BOOT test, the Better Off Overall test. Anyway, once you've got your head around these things, at first they're really hard to understand sometimes and confusing, but once employees become familiar with these sorts of terms and practices, it works quite well. It can work quite well. There's a slide here on the IFA option, which you can have a look at. I'd recommend you call me and talk to me before you enter into an IFA. Okay. I have some examples, but I'm not going to go through that. We don't have time. Employment contracts, I've mentioned these a few times. It's not mandated that you have to have written employment contracts for your staff, but it very much is best practice for employers. It's really hard not to have them anymore. For permanent staff, but now also for casuals, because of the changes to casual legislation and the clear words you now need in casual contracts to cement someone as a casual, to confirm the casual nature of their employment. You can only do that through a written employment contract. So they're very important to confirm the intentions of both parties, therefore protecting you and your employees from any misunderstandings. They also provide the only vehicle that you've got to vary terms of employment, other than, of course, what are they called? Enterprise agreements, which you don't want to go down that path, etc. And they also provide a window to your culture, your values and expectations, and the level of competence and your professionalism. When an employee walks into your business and you've offering them a written contract, they know that they're dealing with a professional organisation who has taken the steps to draw up something that is in writing for them. So it lifts you to the next level. We'd really recommend you do that. We have employment agreement templates for you to use that have been designed for gymnastics clubs. So if you need contract templates, give me a call. I can send you some examples. There are also contract templates on the gymnastics online portal, but they haven't been updated yet. They're old. We don't recommend you use them. Call me and I'll give you some updated ones. So use those contracts to confirm your pay rates, employment terms, and any benefits. Any information is specific to your business, and any information that is maybe not found in your policies as at the moment. Okay. Written employment agreements are much more credible than verbal arrangements, which can easily be contested. There's a slide here that you can go back to about all the things we recommend you put in your employment contracts, but really you don't have to worry. Just call me and I'll send you templates to save you that process. You don't want to be drafting them. Okay. A quick compliance check. What do you need to do now? Okay. Go to the Fair Work Act. We haven't talked much about the Fair Work Act and the National Employment Standards. That's the NES. Make sure you understand what they are and that you're applying those. They're not negotiable, essentially, those National Employment Standards. That covers leave, working hours, that kind of thing. Understand the award terms under the Fitness Industry Award and make sure your employees are correctly classified, that the level you're paying them at is the pay is at least what they should be getting under the level of their skills. That's the level 1 to 7. That needs to be correct. Make sure they're correctly paid under the award according to their current roster. Check if you're doing a loaded rate, if you're paying people a loaded rate and offsetting some of the award terms like overtime, penalties, allowances, annual leave loading, that kind of thing. Make sure you do boot calculations regularly. Every 6 months or so, or if their roster changes, then do another boot calculation. Once you've got your boot spreadsheet set up, it's not hard to do boot calculations, but the first time is a bit trickier. Give us a call if you have any questions about boot calculations, and make sure your employment contracts are up to date. You don't have to vary your contracts every year. Only vary them if things change. If you're increasing pay, they just need to be a confirmation in email, your pay's gone up, etc. You don't need to reissue the whole contract every time with your staff members. Or if the contracts change significantly and you need to update terms, then reissue the contract at that point. Okay, where can you get more information? Well, the Fair Work Commission, Fair Work Ombudsman has a lot of information. Fair Work Ombudsman is generally the go-to organisation for award information. There's more and more information on that website. Every month they're putting new stuff and revising stuff. So always check the Fair Work Ombudsman in particular website. Make sure you've got a copy of the current version of the Fitness Industry Award. I think it's the 21st or something of February, could be the latest update. It's 26th of February, something like that is the latest update. Go onto the Fair Work Ombudsman website and it'll always have the latest version. The same with the pay guide. So many versions out there on the internet. Make sure you've got the latest one, which I think is February again. Can't remember off the top of my head, but they do get tweaked from time to time. Fair Work Act, of course, is the legislation underpinning this. The Gymnastics Australia member portal has a lot of information, job descriptions, employment contracts, other documents. They are being updated at the moment, so please be mindful of that. And we have a huge library of resources that can assist you with any HR matters. Most of what you need we've got, so if you can't find it anywhere else and you think we've got documents that can help you, for example, we've got an information sheet right now on casual employment, the new laws, and we've actually got templates for you to offer your staff or not offer them casual conversion, whatever that case may be. If you're at that stage, which I know a lot of you are, give me a call and I'll send you through this information and the templates. Don't sit there, and try and reinvent wheels. We've got most of those things that you would need and that don't cost you anything. So you give me a call, we have a chat, we send you the information that you need. It's not going to cost you anything. It's free for you. So please use our services if you think we can help you. Are there any questions? Have any questions come through at the moment, Michael?
No, just the ones that I've yelled out to you. But I know Kipper was pretty keen to get that document that you spoke about earlier in the presentation. So I'm sure you'll be able to flick that through to me and I can pass on. Yeah,
which one is that, Michael? The minimum 3 hours to Emma. Yeah, mate. Yeah, no problems. I will send that through to you, Emma, today.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think we're all good.
All right. And all of you who watch the webinar online at some point in the future, again, give us a call, send us an email if you've got any questions at all, and the details are on your screen.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Really appreciate you giving up your time to pass on this information to our clubs. And as Linda said, if you guys do need any help, please don't hesitate to contact Linda at HR Plus. Her details are obviously on the screen there, but if you need them, we can certainly pass those on. Also, just a reminder, I pressed record a little bit later or a little bit too late, that the fitness industry is always changing. So what might be applicable through this presentation, if you are watching, may have changed. So once again, if you need any assistance on that, I'm sure Linda will be able to help. So thanks once again. And I can ask that those slides may be passed on to send to clubs as well if need be, which we're happy to do. And we'll also announce that our third webinar series will be Leadership and Influence for Clubs, and that'll be presented by Greg Hire from his charity, A Stitching Time, which is a good get for us. But I really appreciate your time, Linda, and thanks again.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.